Hello viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Today's on one program, I'm welcoming Professor Dr. Mohammad Dajani Dawoodi. Professor Dajani Dawoodi, I'm welcoming you in this show.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Professor Mohammad Dajani Dawoodi, he's a very remarkable personality. He's an academician, he's a professor of political science. He is an Arab Palestinian, a peace ambassador, a philanthropic personality, and a person, an institution as well. I am just describing a very brief about himself. Professor Dajani has graduated from Lebanese University, from Lebanon, and he was actually born in a Muslim family, very prominent Muslim family in Jerusalem before Israel's declaration of independence. But his parents fled to Egypt in 1947-48. They later returned to Jordan-controlled East Jerusalem. Dajani started in Lebanon and headed the student branch of Fatah guerrilla movement, but the Lebanese government deported him to Syria 1975. But in a short, we'll make his detail in the interview. But in a short, after graduation, there are some academic level. But finally, he masters from Eastern Michigan University of USA, and later first PhD he completed from South Carolina University of South Carolina, and second PhD from University of Texas. He is now the fellow of Washington Institute, fellow of Western Fellowship. So, Professor Dajani, I am welcoming you again, and this is my pleasure to interview you in this show, One on One.
Thank you.
There is the biggest issue in this world nowadays. It is the long-lasting, painful event for world peace and harmony. This is Israel-Palestinian conflict, and you are not only a professor, you are an activist on your student life. You are heading the your guerrilla wing of Fatah movement, and later you transform yourself as a peace ambassador, or you want to, as a peace-loving people, as a philanthropic personality. You have started a Wasatiyah movement. We'll go to the detail how a guerrilla leader, how a student, very veteran fighter, moved into a peacemaker or leading a peacemaking movement. So, firstly, I want to just move into first. So, Professor, where do we now stand regarding this conflict between Palestine and Israel?
We are hoping that there eventually will be peace, because the only way out of the conflict is to create peace and to build peace. Now, it is very difficult for people to appreciate the fact that peace will happen. And despite the conflict, whether in Gaza or the West Bank with the occupation, yet we are hoping that rationality will eventually dominate. The idea is to be able to create bridges of understanding and hope despite the walls of anger and enmity, so that we can eventually leave to our children a peaceful world. We inherited this conflict from our grandparents, and we hope that we would create a better world for our children.
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, you and your family has a very glorious past, and there are some huge struggle with your family also involved. So, can you explain about, tell us about yourself, your family, and your struggle?
My name is Mohammad Dajani Dawoodi. Dawoodi is in reference to King David, because our family was appointed to be the custodian of the King David tomb in 1525 by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. And since then, our family has been in charge of the and were the custodians of the tomb till 1948. Because of the war that took place, the area came under Israeli control, and then in 1967 the Israeli took hold of it as a result of the 1967 war. So our family is a Jerusalemite family. We have been living there for hundreds of years, and we hope to continue being the good citizens of the city.
And one of your family, I think, grandparent, he was the mayor of the Jerusalem city? Or?
Yes, there were a number of my family members who became mayors in Jerusalem or were in the Chamber of Commerce. We have been established as a family, as a Jerusalemite family for hundreds of years.
Yeah, so far we know regarding your...
And actually, when the Ottomans established municipalities throughout the empire in 1864, the first was in Istanbul and the second was in Jerusalem, and they appointed Abdurrahman al-Dajani, who is a distant cousin, a relative, to be the mayor of Jerusalem. So the first mayor of Jerusalem was from the Dajani family.
Okay. So, so far we know you are the 42nd or 43rd descendant of our Prophet Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, is it through Jordan link or the family link of the Prophet?
No, actually, in our family tree, the link goes back to Hijaz. That's where originally we are from. Okay. And then our family moved with the Arab conquest to Morocco, and then from Morocco to Jerusalem. So that was our roots.
Okay. Basically, in Palestinian conflict, Palestinian-Israel conflict, most of the time, the leadership from Palestinian part, that is the main issue. And how you can explain the leadership of Palestine, particularly pre-Arafat, Arafat regime, and after Arafat, how you can explain the Palestinian nation is moving under these leaderships?
Well, our leadership was determined by others rather than by us. When the British were in charge of the mandate of Palestine, they appointed Sheikh Hajj Amil Husseini to be the Mufti of Jerusalem, despite the fact that he was not that qualified to be in that post, and others from the other families were much more qualified, and they would have wished them to be, but he was appointed by them, and he remained for a very long time to be the leader of the community. He was extremist, and he was in a way very radical, and he was not accommodating, he was not tolerant, and not only that, he refused to have anything to do with the Jews at the time, to accept them as part of the Palestinian community in a diversity and pluralism under the law. Yet, when the second leader was the advocate Ahmed Shouqairi, and he was appointed by the Arab Summit Conference that was held in 1964, and he was there. He was the leader of the Palestinian Liberation Organization till 1968. when Fatah took over, and then Yasser Arafat was appointed to be the head of the PLO until his death in 2004. And and then the Palestinians elected Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, and he is there till now. So we have
Abu Mazen means Arafat.
No, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas.
Mahmoud Abbas. So this is the full name of Abbas.
Yeah, and so
after Arafat.
Yeah, and so in reality, we have had only 3 leaders. Which is not a good sign for democracy.
Last 70, 80 years, only 3 leaders.
Yeah.
So you were working with Fatah, PLA, as the head of guerrilla movement, young movement, I think. So what can you tell us some experience, not present perspective, definitely your student life, how it was, and why you engaged with this movement, particularly guerrilla movement, and what was your experience at the time?
Well, it was the environment, the Arab environment in the 50s and 60s. It was after the 1948, what the Palestinians call catastrophe. Nakba. And so they were hoping to shift from being labeled and identified as refugees to be identified as freedom fighters, or later to us. So what happened is that when in the 50s and 60s, the Arab world felt very nationalistic, and the Arab movement was very strong, and people were thinking in terms of liberating Palestine by the Arab armies, that the Arab armies will liberate Palestine. However, in 1967, that thesis proved to be wrong, and the Israelis defeated the Arab armies and conquered the West Bank, Gaza, and took over also the Golan Heights and Sinai. And so the Palestinians at that time were hoping that they would, their strategy shifted from being dependent on the Arab armies to becoming dependent on them. And that's where the Palestinian resistance movement emerged. I was caught in that, and in 1967, June 1967, the defeat caused a lot of psychological pressure on everybody that they wanted to do something. And so I joined Fatah at the time in order to help in the liberation of Palestine. It was the idea, Fatah ideology was armed struggle, and and that there should be, it was the summit of, the Arab summit of 1967 made it very clear to say there is no peace with Israel, the 3 no's, there is no negotiations, and there is no recognition. And so that was at the time the state of affairs, extremely radicalized, until things have changed when first Sadat went to Jerusalem and made peace with Israel, and second when Arafat in the Oslo Accords in 1993 recognized Israel and decided to opt to reject the armed struggle, resistance, and to opt for diplomacy and peace.
We are going through on the later issues, because this is the turning points, I think, when PLO already accept Israeli state, but later there were some ifs and buts remaining, and Muslim world, they did not engage Muslim world because PLO accepted Israel, but they did not take enough diplomatic steps to move on to the peace process. And why it was happened, I will ask you later. But there is very important question about Arafat. You are working with Arafat, and he is very highly regarded Bangladesh and other Muslim countries. Can you tell us something about your memory, about your good time or bad time with Arafat, and about Arafat himself as well?
Yeah, I joined Fatah in the month of August 1967, and then I was trained as a guerrilla movement in Syria and South Lebanon, and I was introduced to Arafat as our leader at the time, and with other leaders.
Yeah.
And so he emerged from Fatah to be the one officially appointed to be the spokesman of Fatah. And then later he became as a chairman. I met him a couple of times, but I feel that he had played a very big role in trying to shift the image of the Palestinians from being refugees to being freedom fighters, and to bringing the issue to world attention. But unfortunately, in my view, when he signed Oslo, the guerrilla mentality in him was much more stronger than the diplomatic, peaceful mentality. And so in dealing with issues, he was not a Nelson Mandela to try to deal with them through a conciliatory vision, but rather to use the militaristic mentality experiences he had. And so in 2000, when he did not get an agreement regarding the Camp David summit, he initiated the intifada, the second intifada, which was a militant intifada, and unfortunately that intifada squashed the peace hopes.
Yeah.
And that was part of our problem, that he was not able to shift from being a guerrilla warfare leader to becoming a diplomatic president of the state of Palestine.
Yeah. How you can explain it? This was the reason behind the birth of Hamas?
I think that Hamas came as a result of the vacancy in the leadership that was left within the Palestinian society, because Fatah was secular and the Palestinian society was moving to becoming religious.
Okay.
And so Hamas emerged to fill that gap where people wanted people wanted to find much more in religion, and that Islam is the solution, rather in the secularism of democracy and others. So here Hamas and Israel supported the idea because they wanted to have
Promote
an opponent to Fatah, and to divide the Palestinians, to have the more than one group within the
Thank you, Professor Dr. Dajani. I think it is very brief statement regarding the division of PLO, particularly PLO and Hamas. And viewers, we have to take a break, a very short break, a very brief break. We are coming back with the same conversation. Please keep it with us.